Now let's return to the news today that far-left socialist Zohran Mamdani has been elected Mayor of New York City. I spoke about the result with New York Post star columnist Miranda Devine a little earlier. Miranda, thank you so much for being with us again. Why do you think Zohran Mamdani won in New York?
I think a couple of reasons. One is that it's a very Democrat city, and the sort of anti-Mamdani vote was split almost evenly, 50-50. Curtis Sliwa, the Republican, and Andrew Cuomo, the sort of spurned Democrat, they had took 50% and Mamdani took just over 50%. So it's a very divided city, even though it's a very Democrat city. The Democrats just couldn't make up their minds. And then the other problem is that you have a lot of young people in this city. It's very expensive. And I guess they're Democrat voters and they rightly feel cheated by the establishment of the Democratic Party, which Cuomo represented. And, they've just had 4 years of Joe Biden, the sort of gerontocracy in Washington, and being assured that Joe Biden was not senile and everything was fine, don't worry about it. And then, they found out in a rush suddenly that Joe Biden during that debate was hopeless, and then their worst nightmare, Donald Trump won the election, and they blamed the Democratic Party and the old guard for that. So I think it's sort of a change of generation, and the Democratic Party is engulfed with this civil war between the moderates and these insurgent communists or socialists, they call themselves, and just the real radicals.
Miranda, it's a pretty shocking result for New York, meant to be America's greatest city. How do you think New York, where you live, will change now under Mamdani?
Look, I have to say that almost, I came here in mid-2019, and Bill de Blasio was in the throes of his second term, and he, in the course of 8 years, he really trashed the city in every possible way. Just the same sort of policies that Mamdani will bring. And so I just felt the city crumbling around me, the smell of marijuana in the streets, the anti-cop protests, which grew into, of course, during the pandemic, the George Floyd, defund the police movement, and the police were defunded to the tune of $1 billion. That was the NYPD. We've seen the streets; they really descended into a terribly dangerous situation. It was scary to get on the subway. Women were being pushed in front of the subway. There were homeless, crazy people everywhere. I think people underestimated two things. One is the depth of the antipathy towards Andrew Cuomo, largely because of his handling of the pandemic, and also, of course, the sexual harassment allegations that finally drove him out of office. But also, I think people underestimated his quality as a candidate. He really ran an extremely lackluster campaign, almost to the point where people are wondering out loud, like, did he deliberately throw it? I mean, has someone got to him to help Mamdani? He took 10 days off after Labor Day. He's not, until just the last couple of weeks, we really haven't seen much of him. It was just a gift to Mamdani, and that will now enrich the whole radical arm of the Democrat Party. They'll get a lot of donations, but also a lot of energy, a lot of momentum going into 2026 midterm elections and beyond. And I think that's an interesting dilemma for the Democratic Party, because they really don't want to succumb to their left flank.
I'm also interested in Mamdani's economic populism, if you like, just offering freebies. And it reminds me, to a lesser extent, but still the same playbook, of Albanese at the last election, offering to pay off students' HECS debt, and now his push for free universal childcare. So it does seem to be this move towards buying votes, offering the younger generation things for free. What's your view on this?
Yes, and not having any sort of cynicism about the ability of these big promise politicians to actually deliver. I mean, for how long in Australia have we heard about universal childcare? This is now Mamdani's big gift. I was at a debate for Unheard the other night in New York, and I was arguing sort of against Mamdani, obviously, and the other side and most of the audience were very much sort of fascinated by this childcare promise. And having seen the promises in Australia and how all they did was drive up the cost of childcare, I was struck by really the naivety of the electorate. I guess it's new for them. This sort of socialism is a new concept in America, maybe. Although living in New York, it's pretty socialist. There's a lot of welfare. And of course, what Mamdani is promising, which is disastrous for the very working class that he claims that he represents, is a sanctuary city. He's promising that it's already a sanctuary city for illegal migrants, which means federal law can't apply. But he's promising to double down on that, spend a huge amount of money in giving like $100 million or something to illegal migrants so that they can get more free legal care to fight the federal government, to fight Donald Trump, and to fight ICE, to stop the immigration enforcement people from the federal government coming in and deporting and arresting the worst of the criminals.
Miranda, just in other news, Dick Cheney has passed away. How do you think he'll be remembered, and will this be somewhat of a mixed legacy?
Definitely. I mean, you could see today, although the flags at the White House and around Washington were at half-mast in his honour, Carolyn Leavitt, the White House press secretary, made a point of saying, yes, well, we've lowered them at half-staff as we're required to by the law and or by statute. And so then President Trump hasn't made any comments. So Dick Cheney is not at all popular with the left and really a large swath of the Republican Party, because he's blamed for, the WMD lies that led America and Australia into the war in Iraq with such disastrous consequences for everyone. And, you really have to be here to understand the toll of those wars in Iraq and Afghanistan on a generation here. So many wounded veterans every day, they're committing suicide. It's really, and you see veterans homeless on the streets. So it's really a burning sore, and it explains in large part why there's such an isolationist streak that has crept particularly into MAGA.
Miranda, always terrific to have your insights. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sharri.